There's a lot of types of marketing where you're really pushing it on people. I'm a big fan of audio or video. It doesn't matter what it is, but if it's a niche opt in medium, people are choosing to consume the content. That as a qualifier to me is gold.
Welcome to this new episode of Beyond Taxes. This is a podcast which we have come out with from TaxGlobal to really help businesses learn more about different aspects besides just finance and taxes. And today we have Michael Kropko, who's a marketer, investor, and a business advisor. Michael, welcome.
Thank you.
It's a pleasure to have you here. And I know that we've talked about you and I have talked about various things when it comes to businesses and marketing, how they go hand in hand. But really, I want to focus on the journey beyond the marketing career that you had. Right? Let's start. I would love to tell the audience about how you started in the world of technology, and then how you sort of migrated and transitioned into marketing. If you don't mind me asking that question.
Sure, no problem. It's always fun to go down memory lane. I'll try to go back. Been in the marketing space for 25 years now, and at a phase being an entrepreneur, looking back, you don't always start off as an entrepreneur. But I knew early on that was something that I wanted to do. I dabbled in plenty of things prior to starting my business career, whether that's trying to build computers from scratch and selling them, or starting a lawn care company or something. I always wanted to be able to control my own destiny and being able to go down the path that I wanted to versus maybe it's an issue with authority, but wanting to be able to set my own rules and my own guidelines. And so I got that experience early on and knew it was something that I wanted to do. But going through college and then starting my career, I also had this FOMO of, well, what is the corporate world like?
Right.
And if I wanted to be a real entrepreneur, I personally feel like you need strong experiences to leverage to offer value to other people. And so I did go down a corporate path and worked at companies like AOL and Qualcomm and some other larger companies. Those were really good experiences to learn and know and understand how does a big company work.
Right.
If you want to become an entrepreneur and eventually grow that to a larger business, you're going to be really inexperienced, and you can also fake it till you make it. But seeing how it can be done well, or some of the bad things that can happen in a corporate environment, I found really valuable to learn and understand and experience. And so I had some of those experiences early on. Also worked at right in the beginning of different mergers when AOL and Time Warner were going on.
Right.
I worked at XM Radio, and my first day on the job, they announced the merger with Sirius. And so worked on that. And so just seeing how companies interact with each other and employees have to roll with those punches are really fascinating to me. But I always dabble between technology and marketing.
Right.
I like the technical aspect of it, but I also found that somewhat boring to just live in that world. And eventually, over time, leaned more down the acquisition element of marketing and how do you acquire more customers and how does a company grow. Myself, I feel it's very easy to get static, and I try to equate what's going on in my own personal life to what I wanted in my career. And so was fortunate to get experience at a variety of different companies, helping them grow and helping them market.
Was this working for some other agency, or was this was the transition phase?
More so on kind of the initial. So working at SiriusXM and was more of a retention marketing play, and how do you keep those customers and the value of that. After I had that experience, moving on to a company called Provide Commerce, which was Pro Flowers and Cherries Berries, and one of the largest gifting companies, one of the very first direct-to-consumer business models. And
on the internet, I remember that time. I remember how famous they'd become.
Very fascinating, and I was actually more intrigued by the supply chain operation of how do you move that many flowers and chocolate-covered strawberries over a 4-week time period of the 2 weeks of Valentine's Day and Mother's Day. It was just, you can't mess up your marketing there. The level of pressure of, hey, we already bought this amount of product 12 months ago, and we now need to sell every last one of them because they're perishable. Was a really amazing training ground on how do you do that in an efficient way in this 2 week period. To at the very end, you've sold your very last product at the most amount of money possible. That's why those shipping costs would get higher if you didn't have a lot of supply, or they'd go very far down if you were undersold. So um, that to me was a great training ground, and learned a ton, and that was kind of my jumping off point from part two of an entrepreneurial journey from when I was younger. It was the right time to move on and do my own thing, and that's when I had started Brown Bird Digital, which was the agency that we formed to help other brands that we felt were maybe working with an agency that weren't getting the level of support and experience that they needed, and allowed me to start my own business with two other partners.
Right, right. A fascinating story and fascinating journey so far. But if you go back to your upbringing as a young kid, right? At what point did you start going back to the comment you made that you wanted to be in control of your destiny going forward? That you always wanted to do something. What would you attribute that to? Like, where did you get that from?
Yeah, I think two things. My dad worked in corporate America for 20 plus years, and he was miserable working in corporate America. So I had you always learn from your parents and those experiences, and I didn't like that he wasn't able to take off when he wanted to. I wanted that control in my life. Very hard worker, and I wanted to. They say as an entrepreneur, you might be able to work whenever you want, but you still have to get those 60-hour weeks in, and I wanted to be able to do that on my own terms. And then as I was going through high school, my mom ended up getting into medical transcription, and she purposely did that as a way to be able to work from home. This was in the 80s and early 90s, and there weren't many jobs that you could work from home.
Right.
And so she was able to find something that aligned with that, so she could be around for us, and that was a really amazing experience. She was able to then take that career and started an online school that I helped her with from a marketing standpoint, and was able to build that and eventually sell it, and created some financial freedom for her. So seeing that journey, being able to have that flexibility and prioritize family and life, but also work hard, and then seeing my dad go through a situation where he was unhappy and didn't like being in that corporate environment. To me, in a corporate world, you're allowing other people to kind of control your own destiny. Did you get the right boss? Is the company going down the path that you want it to go down, or you hope it's going down?
Right.
And I kind of thrive on the pressure of, if whatever I'm doing isn't working, I can only blame myself.
Right. Right. So it was very earlier on you realized the importance of marketing when you were helping your mother with her sort of.
Yeah, seeing as in saying it out loud, I haven't explained that portion of my life in a while, but just seeing the importance of that and the growth. Sometimes when you're marketing a business, you're doing it out of survival, the blend of like, is this sales or is this marketing, and how are you attempting to achieve success? It just is natural based on that realm.
Right.
But that fight for survival is important. You kind of wake up in the morning and you have to succeed. You can't just kind of go through the motions. And I think that kind of overlaps to my personality on, I don't want to just go through life checking a box and going through the motions.
Right.
You want to look back and be able to know that you really tried to achieve something.
Right. Thank you. And so when you started your career working for AOL and then eventually for Qualcomm, how was, and then the XM Sirius merger,
Yep.
What were the key learnings from those experiences earlier on? What did they teach you fundamentally?
Process to me was pretty important. How do you create a well-oiled machine? There's obviously lots of inefficiencies that take place in a large company,
Right.
but at its core, you really need to have the right approach. Whether that's project management and you're rolling something out, you can't just flip a switch and create a new product or a new offering to all of your customers and not properly tested and have the right checks and balances. There's no second take when you're a
Right.
large company like that. But when you're in a startup or an entrepreneurial, you might skip testing, or you might just go straight to lab because there's the risk reward is different there.
Right.
And so what I've seen in a lot of entrepreneurs, they might make a lot of shortcuts. We were talking earlier on. You could take finance for example and say, well, you can make a lot of shortcuts, but you're going to pay for it later. You could do that in technology. You're going to pay for it later. Seeing how companies took shortcuts and they had to pay for it, but on the positive side of some of those large companies, they did it the right way, and that's allowing them to grow and scale.
Right.
And so I think that's a hard thing for any entrepreneur. The shortcuts are really easy and they're tempting.
Mm-hmm.
You've run a lot of businesses as well, and
Right.
you know, well, maybe there's some shortcuts you can take,
Yeah.
or you have to for cash reasons. But there's some that if you're going to build a successful business, those shortcuts are just going to cost you money in the long run.
Correct.
And so I got to see how to not take shortcuts, which I felt like is a very valuable experience.
Yeah. And then how did you pick? Because AOL, Qualcomm, and then you take XM. They're so completely different sectors and different businesses. How did you pick them?
Depends on the phase of life I was in, and sometimes you're just looking for a job at that phase in your life. So I can't say that I had all the intention in the world. A big thing in my life is I never wanted to move for a job. And so I chose to move to San Diego from Ohio after college without a job, because that's where I wanted to live in. I wanted to be an experience, and I didn't want to get a job or be told to move somewhere else. I didn't. Again, it goes back to my own control issues,
Right.
and I wanted to have that. And so finding companies that I felt like were well respected in an area, or just the opportunity presented itself. AOL was when I was at Ohio State. CompuServe, if anybody remembers them, they were headquartered there and were purchased from AOL. So there was a large footprint there, and that was something that made sense. Moving to San Diego, Qualcomm was
the number one company to be in.
The number one company to be in. I wish I worked there for longer and for earlier in my life. I missed the window on that one.
Right.
And just kind of finding a company that's doing interesting things. I didn't want to work for what I, in my own personal opinion, what would find as a boring company. Who's doing something unique and innovative that I was excited to tell people I worked for.
Correct. Yeah, no, I think it's a good point you make. I don't think people have to be intentional, because there's so many young people graduating, right, and coming out of college, and there's so many choices, and the choices are changing from when you and I graduated, right, to now. The options of opportunities are so massively different from what when you and I graduated, right, and so. It's not bad to just have a plan and not execute on it, right? Or sorry, what I mean is you can it's nothing wrong in not having a plan, because you start somewhere and then you figure your way out. And in your case, it seems like you started with AOL because you wanted to be in technology, but you also wanted to move to San Diego, and that was your gateway to that.
Yeah. And I think just most people think they know what they want, and they actually have no friggin' clue what they want. Or they graduate with a specific degree, and I graduated with an MIS and a marketing degree. What I thought marketing was after going to school was working in a Fortune 500 company and just kind of the stereotypical product placement and just how you're approaching it. That direct to consumer wasn't even a thing.
Right.
And so marketing has evolved and changed. So if my ideal version of what I thought marketing was completely different in the real world.
Right.
And so whatever you think something is until you have that real world experience. And then I learned, I don't like this element, but I like this other element.
Right.
Logistics is something that's always interested me, but it never developed into my career path. But I'm always fascinated from it. So you don't always get to pick and choose everything that you want to do.
Right. And as I said, there's nothing wrong in it. Eventually you get the different various experiences, and it builds your personality, and then you figure out your way forward. And so going forward, and how you started Brown Bear, marketing, and you said you started with two other folks. Can you dive into that journey? Like, how was that first initial year of starting it, and what was the niche you guys were going after?
A very first interesting year. Anytime you're starting a business and you're used to getting a salary that arrives in your bank account every 2 weeks, whether you worked hard or not, or took 2 weeks vacation, the money still shows up in the bank account. And when you're starting fresh, it's different, and it's always fun to go down memory lane because as you get further away from that starting point, a lot of people forget and lose that fire when what it was like. But um, Steve and Kurt are the two guys that I started with, and it was very complimentary. We all had different skill sets that we wanted to pursue, but we all knew we wanted to accomplish something together. And I'm a big fan of starting a business with other people. It's very lonely when you're the founder, and sometimes you're in your own echo chamber. And so finding people that you're able to bounce ideas off of and are going to tell you the truth, if you're seeking advice from a friend or a parent or someone else, they're going to tell you what you want to hear.
Right.
Or they're not going to have any clue with what you're talking about because
Right.
they're not an expert in that
Right.
space. And so being able to really partner with people that you like, know, and trust, it makes the journey that much more fun. And so
Yeah.
those early days, like you're figuring it out. What's our revenue path? What's our plan? How do we grow and scale? And everything is new.
Right.
Hiring your first employee, setting up a 401k plan for your employee. Well, you want to hire somebody. Well, what are your benefits?
Right.
Getting all those things. There's a lot of elements in starting a business that have nothing to do with your business.
Right.
That I think a lot of people struggle with, but they're really important. And our main goal of starting something was to really provide a work environment that people wanted to be in.
Right.
And our number two goal was to not do business with assholes. And that was like just any bad experience that we had in our corporate lives, we wanted to try to make sure that we weren't um, providing that environment.
Right.
And as you get bigger, that gets harder and harder
Harder to,
because
yeah.
you end up coming full circle with understanding why certain things existed in a corporate environment,
Right.
because it's impossible to control everything once you get to a certain size. So,
Right.
but starting from scratch is a really fun and enjoyable experience, and you have to be able to roll with the punches. I like to say it's a roller coaster.
100%. Couldn't agree with you anymore on that front. It's a roller coaster. Every day there's something there's gonna be, like, every day there's gonna be at least one curveball that's gonna be coming at you. And it's gonna be a fastball as well. So how do you position yourself and hit it, and where do you hit it, and how do you get out of it?
You just don't want to completely strike out, and you realize
Exactly.
all those curveballs that happen, you're years down the road later, and you're still in business. Well, some things that you were really worried about early on was wasted energy.
Yeah. Yeah.
And trying to keep that positive mindset. That's they say the fun of entrepreneurship. In the moment, it usually doesn't feel fun, but as time goes on, you're able to enjoy it and appreciate it more.
Exactly right. Exactly right. I think if I remember, the first company when I was in my young days started with a biotech company here in San Diego, right? And I came in and I was employee number 5, right? And was the only finance person on the team. Everyone else was like scientists, PhD scientists. And I felt like I took it upon myself, and this is something that is a personality trait of mine that I just take it on myself. Like, whatever I do it with all sincerity and with, like, it's my own thing, right? And so I realized I was always stressed about what's going to happen next, right? Like, because biotech was a new field for me, and trying to figure that out, along with managing finance and operations of a company that's burning through a lot of cash.
It's a whole separate roller coaster.
Exactly. But no, but the key has always been for me as well is creating the right culture, right? So that you have the right team. Because my belief, and it feels like it's yours as well, that if you have the right team, you can overcome all the hurdles and really come out shining, right?
Totally agree, and I think managing stress is pretty important as well because Do you shield your team from stress? Do you let them know everything that's going on? Not everybody can
Handle
handle,
it.
and there's going to be ups and downs. And if you have a bunch of employees, well, they're not trying to be an entrepreneur. They're working for an entrepreneurial company, and so how do you kind of create that right culture that people are open to the ups and downs and are able to embrace them,
Right.
versus if you're going to be worrying about every day that people are going to see
Right.
that. And
Right.
so it really kind of forces you to have a glass half full approach, that things are going to work out and be successful.
Right. Right. No,
Easier said than done.
yes. But I think this is a good topic for a lot of young people out there, right? Because since the pandemic, a lot of people have started to do their own thing, right? And it's been a shift because by force or because of the trend set by others, right? Like everyone wants to have multiple sources of income. Everyone wants to do their own thing. And to your point, it's not everyone's cup of tea. And sometimes you get all this information out there which makes it feel easy and you know, but people really need to know what they're getting into, right? And I think in the end it all works out for people who have the rounded approach. And going back to your journey, right? Like you were able to grow your business, your marketing agency, and then merge it with a even larger agency. And how did that sort of process work for you?
Yeah, a lot of it has to do with timing, which is really important, and really just aligning on the right philosophy. If it's no different than me starting the business with Steve and Kurt, and then meeting new business partners that Marshall and Russell, finding complementary skill sets and everybody marching toward the same goal,
Hmm.
and really having that fire. I see you spend more time with people in work than you do with your own significant other, and you have to really be able to get along and believe in each other and build each other up.
Right.
And I think that's a pretty important element to that journey. But really pushing each other too. I
Right.
think there's a certain element of competitive tension that needs to exist on, hey, can we do more? Can we do bigger?
Right.
Is there another level?
Right.
But to me, it comes down to just hard work and perseverance.
Right.
Things don't just magically happen. And I think, as people know, we were very, uh, we can say lucky, as I mentioned, to timing, but getting into the podcast advertising space at its infancy.
Hmm.
But you could say lucky, but we also saw that opportunity and put our foot on the gas and
Right.
really went full throttle and saw a bigger picture vision on what that space could be. In some cases, it was even before listenership was there.
Right.
And you used to ask somebody, well, do you listen to a podcast? We're like, what's a podcast? I don't know. I don't understand. And then now I ask somebody and I say, well, what podcast do you listen to? And everybody answers. And
Right.
they get excited about it and their
Right.
eyes light up. And every year that goes by, uh, radio becomes less and
Less
less
relevant.
popular. It's still very large and much bigger than podcasting that a lot of people don't realize.
Oh, really?
It also skews a little bit older, so 50 plus.
Hmm.
But every year there's a newer generation coming in that they're exclusively listening to podcasting, and so those things are shifting. But any good idea early on seems like it's not that good of an idea,
Right.
or there's not enough attention to it. And so that always, from an entrepreneur, that causes you to question. Luckily, we saw kind of the influencer and the endorsement element that had some overlap to radio, and we saw a lot of talent coming further over. But a lot of things are also just reinvented.
Right.
There were plenty of Rush Limbaughs and different folks out there. YouTube, there were plenty of YouTube's been around
Forever.
forever and a long time, but the growth in YouTubers actually promoting a product within their
Follow.
video
Right.
is relatively new. There were kind of pre-roll and post-roll and things through Google, but that wasn't an endorsement. And so this is really an area that isn't that it's not that innovating at its core, and it's somewhat old school if you think about how it's actually working. But it's where people are at, and I think finding people where you can market to them, which is something that that we got really good at.
So talk to me about that transition, because when you started Brown Bear, what was the niche you guys were focusing on? And talk to me about the journey of your first customer.
Yep. We so acquisition marketing was really the core. How do you acquire new customers, leveraging a lot of the experience that we collectively had from the corporate world. Provide Commerce, we had more of an in-house agency, and so we started to work with other agencies
Hmm.
as we got a little bit bigger. And we're like, these guys don't know what they're doing,
Yeah.
and it was painful to pay another company money that was supposed to be an expert that had no clue and you knew more of. And so that light bulb went off for us. How can we help other companies in a very integrity based way grow and scale their marketing? And so uh, Harry's Razors was one of our first clients.
Oh, wow.
Blue Apron was one of our first clients. Casper, the mattress company. And so
Yes.
as D2C companies were growing and getting bigger, they had a great idea, but they weren't necessarily experts
And marketing.
at marketing, and so we were able to help those businesses grow and scale and really
Wow.
capitalize on that. But we were focused on a variety of forms of digital marketing and audio and TV, and more of a consultancy to kind of help those brands approach things in the right way and continue to evolve that and help a variety of other companies. And so as time evolved, we saw more and more of an opportunity in audio. And that's where, when we partnered with Ad Results to form Ad Results Media, we decided to, about 6 months in, drop the digital portion.
Completely.
It was a profitable division. We were doing good work, but again, it goes down to that roller coaster and different opportunities. We saw there was a much bigger opportunity. There's tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of digital agencies. When we started our agency in San Diego as Brown Bear, I had no clue there were over 1,000 agencies in San Diego. I probably should have done more research, but sometimes you do more research, and that would have just
Stopped you.
that would have stopped us and
Yeah.
scared us,
Yeah,
and we
exactly.
felt like we had a niche. We Most of our clients were in other cities and locations. It didn't matter that there were that many. It makes sense that there's a lot of agencies in San Diego because that's the type of work that you can do anywhere. So if you're going to be somewhere, why not San Diego? But
Right. Right.
um, that would have scared us. And I think that's also something that, for entrepreneurs listening, like, if you do too much research, you're always going to find a reason to not do something.
Right.
And there's so many businesses that exist now because people just persevered and found their way through. So that was a really big pivot in our business
Yeah.
to essentially drop clients, drop services that we were providing, and go down, put
Completely.
all your eggs in one basket. But we thought that was an opportunity, and that was something, just a white space that we wanted to capitalize on.
Yeah. No, that's and that was how many years ago did you do that pivot?
That pivot was around 2017.
2017. Yeah. At that point, podcast was not like people were talking about it, but it was not the thing that it is today.
Correct. I think probably back then, maybe 30% of the U.S. population was maybe listening to a podcast. I think it was a couple of years ago, it eclipsed the 50% mark,
Right.
which just kind of keeps growing and growing.
Right. And that market has been growing, and of course we spoke about it a little bit earlier as well on a different chat. Podcasting has become the way to gain trust with your consumers, basically.
I mean, it's a great way. It's long form, and it's an intimate environment, and it's a niche environment. So there's a lot of types of marketing where you're really pushing it on people, and I'm a big fan of audio or video. It doesn't matter what it is, but if it's a niche opt-in medium, people are choosing to consume the content. And so that, as a qualifier, to me, is gold. You could take TV advertising. Yes, they're opting in to listen to or to watch that channel, but they could just be tuning in. They're not loyal to whatever that following is. And those commercials that are taking place are not an endorsement. They're not woven into the content. They're a separate commercial. But long story short, you have a niche audience. It could be 5,000 listeners that you have. You could have 100,000. You could have 2 million. All of them are loyal, and they've been listening weekly, monthly, it could be years. Good friend of mine is a huge fan of Adam Carolla, and when I first met him, I was like, "Hey, which Adam's going to be in town? Would you like to meet him and go to the show?" And I was like, you would have thought, like, I was inviting him to like the most amazing thing in the entire face of the earth, like would drop anything. He'd been following him for years and listening, knows everything about Adam Carolla. Anything that you can imagine, he's heard because he's been listening to him for hours upon hours upon hours, knows him better than probably some of his closest friends.
Wow.
And so when that type of relationship exists, and somebody like Adam, who's one of the first podcasts we work with, ironically, says, "Hey, this product is amazing. You should try it out. I use it every day." Um, Electric Bike is a brand that we worked with in the past, and he rides it every day with his son to school, and only has amazing things to say. And it's like that's a real life experience that he's now telling to his hundreds of thousands of followers in a very intimate environment that they've all chosen to listen to. So that opt in qualifier to me is very very powerful, and it
Right.
doesn't matter how large the audience is.
Correct.
It could be 100 people. It's not very scalable, but
Right.
but those people really know and trust, and it's hard to know what to trust these days because
Correct.
there's a lot of stuff out there.
Right.
This is one of, in my opinion, one of the more purest forms that you can achieve.
Right. Right. I know we have passed the 30-minute mark, but the last question I want to ask today is, and I'm sure we can probably continue for the next couple of hours. There's so much to learn from your journey itself. But how, in this day and age where podcasting is becoming the thing for most people, for most companies, what is your recommendation as to how to grow that audience? Is there a straightforward path to creating the right type of content and growing the audience and the trust with your targeted consumer?
Nothing is straightforward, so I wish I could. That'd be too easy. It's like asking me to tell the future. I wish I could do that. Uh, Authenticity is probably the best, and I think not comparing to others. So many people, there's millions of podcasts out there, and so many people think they're going to be the next Joe Rogan. And it, there's a lot of branded podcasts that are getting more popular for companies, and adding value to me is always going to win. And is it worth the time? I think being able to repurpose content is amazing. So maybe you have a really small following, but it's a way to look bigger as a business. It's a way to, hey, now you have this amazing video and you could take a clip of what we're doing here and show it in different channels. And so it shows that you're more of a real company
Right.
by having a voice versus just hiding behind a website. And I think so many companies end up hiding behind that website.
Right.
And everybody's company's goals are going to be different. If you're in an industry that it's really important that you get the word out there, you can invest a lot of time, energy, and money. But again, nothing happens quickly overnight. And so there's plenty of people I know that have been having their own podcast for many, many years. They're on episodes, say 5, 6, 700, and they have 25,000 people listening. And that's a really large for what they're doing. That's highly powerful. And they're monetizing that audience without ads, just people that are aware of their existence. If they would have stopped when they got stuck at only having 1,000 people and just completely stopped, they wouldn't have any of the value that they have now. So there's a really strong compound effect from that.
Right.
And in fairness to the listener, there's a really good check and balance on, well, you better be providing quality on a regular basis. Otherwise, people aren't going to listen. And so if you're comparing yourself to somebody else, well, they've been delivering value for a really long time. You're not going to listen to something that isn't delivering value. You're going to stop. So I think it's a shared accountability that takes place there, and it's really important to not get discouraged because it doesn't matter how many are listening now. You're practicing, you're getting better, you're getting bigger, and then you're going to be ready when your audience does grow to have a really polished product for anybody out there who's just getting started.
Yeah, no. Good insight. I think the key word here, Mike, is authenticity, right? Having that and just sort of being your own natural brand or natural company or natural self and promoting it in the most authentic way is, I've seen that do miracles for companies and individuals as well.
People see through the BS very quickly. So it's a lot of, the truth always vibrates the quickest. So it's just easier to go that route.
Yeah. Perfect. Thank you for coming. This was fantastic to have you here. And I'm sure we'll be chatting more and getting more insights from you.
Sounds great. I appreciate the time and best of luck.
Thank you.